Welcome to the Synergistic Leader podcast, where we explore the key factors shaping leadership in education and unlock insights that drive change and make a difference. Now, here is your host, Dr. Beverly J. Irby.
Welcome to the Synergistic Leader. This podcast is where we explore leadership that goes beyond authority. It's about synergy. I'm Beverly J. Irby, Regents Professor, Senior Associate Dean for Academics, and the Marilyn Kent Byrne Endowed Chair for Student Success in the College of Education and Human Development at Texas A&M University. I also direct the Education Leadership Research Center. The Synergistic Leadership podcast is based upon the Synergistic Leadership Theory, the first published leadership theory in the 21st century, developed and tested by a team that I led. This theory integrates leadership behaviors, organizational culture, attitudes, values, and beliefs, and external forces to create a dynamic, effective, nonlinear leadership model. As we know, theory guides actions, and the synergistic leadership theory maximizes collective strengths. We recognize that many leadership theories developed from the 1930s through the 1980s lacked comprehensiveness. Leadership isn't one size fits all. It's not just about the leader at the top, but about how leader behaviors flow with people and through teams, organizations, and communities. Join us as we dive into real-world strategies, conversations, and insights to help you lead with impact, influence, and innovation. Ready to lead synergistically? Let's get started. Today's guest is a renowned scholar and an all-around wonderful individual. Dr. Chance Lewis is the Carol Grotnes Belk Distinguished Professor of Urban Education at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. He is a leading authority in urban education, and his pioneering research addresses the educational challenges and opportunities within urban school settings, focusing on teacher preparation, student achievement, and policy reform. Dr. Lewis has implemented innovative programs that enhance educational outcomes, build educational environments promoting the best practices for students and teachers. His work has garnered numerous awards and recognitions, solidifying his reputation as a transformative figure in urban education. Through his scholarly contributions and mentorship, Dr. Lewis continues to shape the future of urban education, and he advocates for systemic change. Dr. Lewis is also the host of another podcast. I will plug that one as well, the School Turnaround Podcast, where he engages with experts and practitioners to explore strategies for improving struggling schools and advancing education. In addition, Dr. Lewis has served as the Dean's Distinguished Fellow here in our College of Education and Human Development at Texas A&M. So we are so very pleased to have you, Dr. Lewis, to be with us today on the Synergistic Leader podcast. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Irby, thank you for the warm introduction, and thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here with you today.
Thank you. I have a few questions for you today.
Sure.
It would center around synergistic leadership, of course. So my first question is, what leadership behaviors have you found in your work that create the most synergy within an organization?
Well, thank you for that question. And, in preparing for today and kind of thinking about and reflecting on my own leadership, particularly in the initiatives that I lead, I was really thinking about the synergistic pieces and one of the things well, a few of the factors I thought about was, thinking about these behaviors that I really think are around like inclusivity, shared power, kind of vision driven action and adaptability. I think all of these are kind of things that I kind of try to put in my particular work. And to break that down in the urban education spaces that I'm in and, create this synergy, one of the things I first tried to do from my side is really be a visionary for the people that I lead, right? Kind of set the path with a vision and kind of just transformative leadership. Because my whole goal in education is to do things that are transformative, not just the run of the mill kind of leadership, right? I want something that could last a long time. So one of the things that I try to do is set a clear vision that really aligns with the values that I have as an individual, plus the organization that I lead as well, and set the goals and the pace really for the people that I work with, right? And I've found over the years that has been important because many of the constituents and stakeholders, they say, wow, you told us the vision and we see it because we see it over time, over and over again. So I constantly reiterate the vision and what we were trying to do in the space to set the path. That's what I like to do first. And then another kind of synergistic piece I really think about in the space that I'm in is centered around culturally responsive leadership. And the reason why that's important in the work that I'm doing is because I deal with a lot of people from different backgrounds, whether they're school leaders or school stakeholders or students and their families and communities. So, I try to acknowledge and embrace the diverse backgrounds and experiences and strengths of people that I come in contact with, right? Because that brings synergy to the organization. So I want people to feel, valued as part of the work and create that synergy as well. But lastly, in this particular point, I really try to be authentic in the work that I do, be myself, and show people I truly care about them and really be a servant leader. I want to be the kind of person to lead by example, to support people and have their best interest at heart. So that servant leadership style for me, I have found over the years has brought a lot of synergy to the organization where I'm not going to ask anyone to do something that I'm not willing, to do myself, right? And I think for different initiatives, I'll use one example, like this big international conference on urban education that I lead that has grown, exponentially. Not only casting a vision, like I said earlier, but if needed, I'll be the one, unpacking the boxes. I mean, I'll be that person, serving people, making sure they're okay as well. And then I see that kind of spreads through, our organization as well. So when I really think about those kind of factors, around inclusivity, and letting people know that it's a shared kind of power. It's not, me on top and everybody, under that. Is really more about, casting a vision, being culturally responsive, kind of leader to all the groups that I deal with, and then being a servant leader. And I found, like I said, that has created a lot of synergy, in the organization that I've been able to lead over the years.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. And certainly I have seen that in action with you here while you've been at Texas A&M with us on your fellowship.
Mhm.
I've seen that in our Houston initiative that you have initiated, the greater Houston area,
Yes.
in terms of urban schools and even out into the suburban area as well, the larger urban centers. So I have seen that collaboration, and that's what you're talking about, really being a collaborative leader and
Yes.
bringing people in. And I have
Yes.
absolutely observed that. Thank you so much. Well,
Yes.
I have a
Thank
second
you.
question. Um, so, how does an organization, thinking about the organization's structure, how does an organization's structure impact the leader's ability to foster synergy among teams as you work with teams?
Yes, great question. I mean, organizational structure definitely directly impacts the leader, right? Because it kind of gives you it kind of impacts the leader's ability to kind of just think about how they want to operate within the organization. So, from a leadership perspective, when you think about organization structure, of course, the leader will have to be flexible and inclusive and really think about participatory structures that create the best conditions for people to reach their full potential. So when I think about organizational structure, I think about as a leader, what is the best way that I can put forward a leadership style to bring the best out of my people. So one of the ways I really kind of think about this is to think about not having a rigid kind of hierarchical structure. I mean, I'm not wired like that. So I really think more around really a decentralized and collaborative structure, right? And so, and that will be more around creating teams and giving them autonomy, right? And in that autonomy, you think about letting people's voices be heard and kind of shaping the policies and ways of operation and allow them to get ownership, right? And commitment to the mission, right? So as I said earlier, I would set the vision of the organization, but allowing these persons who are involved to, have autonomy to do the work that they need to do. And as you mentioned earlier, like the Houston Initiative, right? Of course, I don't know everything with that, but as you look at it, as we create teams or whatever the initiative is, we create teams and allow the team members to do all the great things that they can do, and then they can function in a highly effective way. Another thing I think about is within the organizational structure, thinking about clearly defining roles, right, for people. So when we talk about the teams, kind of clearly defining, what each team will do, and utilize that to balance, autonomy and accountability, right? So it gives them room to operate. They know what the accountability would be as a result of their work, right? But they can still create that ownership in it as well. And then as we look in that kind of organizational structure, another piece that I try to create within that is, really kind of laying out effective communication channels, not only to me, to the team, from me to the team, but from the team to me, but then within and across the teams as well, right? So because one of the things I've seen in organizations over the years, sometimes one team does not know what another team is doing, right? Or when they find out, it's too late, or we're past the point of collaboration. So I often think about that early on, and how can we open up communication channels within and across the organization at the same time. So, I always say to myself, if I were to step out of the equation as the leader, could the teams, one, still function, and could they still communicate to reach the goal and be accountable for it as well? So when we think about these organizational structures, you have to have a level of flexibility with them, but also in thinking about that as well, giving these particular teams open communication channels so they can communicate with each other and flourish. So I would sum up this particular question when we think about organizational structure as we move more into this 21st century and all of these technological advancements, right? We have so many ways to disseminate information, communicate with each other. We just have to utilize it better within organizations to reach the goals that we're trying to reach as well.
Excellent advice, Dr. Lewis. So the third question that I have for you is about another component, actually, of the synergistic leadership theory. It's about external forces or external factors. How do external forces like policy changes or economic shifts or societal trends influence leadership effectiveness?
Yeah, I mean, wow,
Yeah.
as a leader, as I relate it to, the current times in the world right now, right? Leaders really have to kind of be at the forefront and thinking about these external factors, right? And really anticipating some trends before they happen, right? And advocating for positive change and leveraging really these external factors as opportunities for growth. So what I mean by that is that if you look at policy changes as we see in many organizations, that also has an impact for the leader because it shapes leadership priorities, right? So some things that a leader was thinking about last year is not what they're thinking about now, in many ways, because, you have to be, one of my favorite words in leadership is pivot, right? And, pivot, but without losing who you are, right? Because as you start to think about that, those kinds of external forces and factors can, really shape these leadership priorities. So when you think about education, policy, funding priorities as well. I like to use the example in the work that I'm in. So many of us in higher education, rely on government grants, of course, right? And we've seen kind of the shift in that, lately as well. But one of the things I've try to do to model the example of anticipating trends, I always try to be diversified in laying out the types of funding that I would bring into the organization, not just grants, but looking at, other kind of entrepreneurial kind of opportunities to keep an organization going if one bucket of funding dried up. So if I would utilize that today for a leader to kind of think about as well, we have to think about when economic shifts happen, how do we think about resource allocation and sustainability? Because that has direct impact on people's lives that are in your organization. So this is why you have to anticipate trends, right? But also think about, political pressures that are out there. The leader has to think about these kind of external factors because the pulse of how the leader considers that will have a dynamic impact on the organization as well. But when the persons in the organization know that you're kind of on the pulse of that and thinking about that and how you kind of shape your leadership style, it brings, I think, a certain calm over an organization where, the rest of the world can, be totally stressed out because of these external factors. But I think the leader has to, in some ways, anticipate what you can. Of course, you can't anticipate everything, right? But anticipate what you can and properly position the organization to be in a place to weather storms and thrive, during those times of storms as well. So that's kind of how I think about external factors, from a leadership perspective, when you think about, kind of looking out, on the horizon and saying, hey, here are some things that we may want to consider, in the organization as well.
Thank you so much. All true words
Mm-hmm.
said. Um, a fourth question that I have for you is about another factor in the synergistic leadership theory, and that's about attitudes, beliefs, and values. So, how
Mhm.
can leaders align different attitudes and perspectives to create a unified vision and unity of purpose? Now, you've mentioned a little bit about that within the organization, but how can leaders align different attitudes and perspectives to create a unified vision and unity of purpose?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When from a leadership perspective, when you have diverse attitudes and perspectives in an organization, and many leaders are going to have that, quite often. The biggest thing that we have to be thinking about as leaders is to let people know their voices and their attitudes are respected. You look for ways where you can integrate that where possible and leverage it for collective progress, right? Because as the old adage says, where there's unity, there's strength, right? But people have to know in the organization that their voices are respected as well. So when you kind of take that into account, you think about a shared vision, in what we talk about in our work around, equity and inclusion, right? Like when you think about this, is creating this vision around these collective aspirations, that people bring to the table, and kind of thinking about that. But then also to do that, you have to be willing to be an active listener, right, and have meaningful discourse, with people in the organization when you have, different perspectives that are coming together. And I think once we, kind of acknowledge and validate these diverse perspectives, the leader is the goal of the leader to find the common ground and reduce resistance, in the organization, right? Because I'm a believer that the organization is a reflection of leadership, right? My favorite movie is Remember the Titans. And so there's a one-liner in there where they say, attitude reflects leadership, right? And when you kind of think about that notion, with different people coming to the table, how the leader kind of galvanizes and hear those voices and bring them together and let people know that they are valued, will go a long way, in aligning these kind of diverse attitudes and perspectives as well. But then I think another thing that we have to think about, especially as the world becomes more and more diverse, we have to, as leaders, communicate consistently, right, and transparently, right? It's okay for a leader to say, I don't know, right, or I didn't know about, let's just say this particular culture or this particular perspective, but they take time to educate themselves, right? Because they understand in the bigger picture, if I understand that and find ways to integrate that, that makes the organization, stronger as well. So when we think about these things, the diverse kind of attitudes and perspectives, what we come to understand that when we deal with the stakeholders that we deal with, right, as leaders, right, we can sell that, our organization values certain things, right, and the stakeholders that we deal with will have a greater appreciation for that because some of those same insights they may be dealing with in their organizations as well, right? So if they know this is a value for you, and how you function in that particular organization, I think from my years in kind of being in a leadership role, they know that, as you work with them, you're going to be looking for the best out of their diverse, kind of communities as well to reach the shared goal of what you're trying to get to as well. So that's kind of how I kind of think about that notion, really just embracing what you have, but then utilizing that to create a shared vision, right? And how you want to lead that going forward as well.
Absolutely. And I thought about your comment about the Titans, and I'm thinking about you know the leader also really determines the altitude also
That's right.
of the group,
That's
right?
right.
Yes. So, in our final moments, Dr. Lewis, could you share your thoughts on why having a synergistic leader is crucial for organizational success and long-term impact?
Yes, that's a great question. When I think overall, having a synergistic leader really takes a either small or large complex organization, right, and really moves it to a particular place where it could reach its full potential, right? Because we can never underestimate the value of leadership, right? And as we look at the world right now, the world cries out for effective leaders, right? Those that are synergistic, right? Those that can galvanize, those that can look at these external factors, think about the diverse world that we live in, and think about all the things that leaders have to think about, but really utilize that to move the organization to a place where, like I said, it reaches its full potential, but it also has the kind of impact that it's supposed to have, right? Because we've all seen organizations that did not reach their full potential, and it leaves a hole, right, in the work, right? And so as we look at the leader, as I kind of think about it, in my own opinion, is to really the person that can show the way, right? But also in showing the way, they don't have to be in the front all the time as well. But they put the right people in the front when it's time for them to be in the front, right? Or those that are in the back, wherever people need to be positioned at a certain amount of time, the leader puts the people in the right place, right? I think about chess. I was introduced to chess at a young age, and you got to have a strategy as you play chess, right? And I think that's the same holds true for leaders in today's time, but not just any leader, right? A synergistic leader. The reason why you're doing this podcast to really kind of think about and be the best representative of the organization, can move that organization further, and then also allow that organization to thrive, even after they're no longer the leader there, right? And I think all of those are characteristics of effective leadership that I often think about quite often as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lewis. Well, you see that Dr. Lewis is a renowned scholar and just a wonderful individual, and also he's a synergistic leader. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Lewis, on our Synergistic Leader podcast. Thank you so much. Join us
Thank you
again
for
next
having me.
time.
I was honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Synergistic Leader podcast. You can look for our episodes on YouTube and Spotify.
This podcast is housed in the College of Education and Human Development at Texas A&M University, where we transform lives.